I'm Cate Faehrmann. So great for you all to be joining this very, very interesting webinar on the Great Gas Con. Of course, as we're beginning, before we begin, I want to acknowledge that all of us are tuning in from stolen Aboriginal land. I'm assuming we're all tuning in from Australia. I am here on Gadigal land in Redfern, and what usually many of you do at the start of these webinars is to say hi in the chat and to let us know where you're tuning in from as well. This is going to be a very informative webinar. I'm really looking forward to it. I wish we didn't have to do it. I wish we didn't have to continue to educate people about fossil fuels and the fact that they need to stay in the ground, but yep, here we are. So we have three very knowledgeable speakers, and I've pulled this webinar together following the Albanese government's outrageous decision on the Northwest Shelf gas project, which was made, of course, so soon after the federal election. And I pulled it together because we know here in New South Wales, we still are facing the very real threat of Santos building its outrageous coal seam gas project in the Pilliga Forest and on the Liverpool Plains, on Gomeroi country. And we're still being fed a hell of a lot of myths and lies and misinformation about needing that project and about the gas industry and about gas in general. So that's what our experts are here to do today. Now, as usual, this will be an interactive webinar. We'll hear from the speakers first. I'll throw a few questions to them as well, and then you are very much encouraged to put your questions in, ideally in the Q&A box. Some people put it in the chat and it's a bit hard to follow. If you can find the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, please use that, and we will endeavour to answer everybody's questions tonight. Right, so I want to kick things off because I tell you what, these people who have our wonderful panelists who have given up their time tonight are full of a hell of a lot of fantastic information. At the end, we will hear from people as well in terms of what can be done. There are some great actions that can be taken at the end of tonight's webinar as well. So make sure you stay tuned for that. All right, let us start then with we've got our three speakers. They can all come on now and show their faces, their wonderful faces. We've got Tim Buckley, who's just waved from Climate Energy Finance. We've got Margaret Fleck, Liverpool Plains farmer and Lock the Gate activist. And we've got the wonderful Bubbly, Raymond, who is a fantastic Gomeroi man who has been fighting coal and gas, including very recently and for a long bloody time actually in the Native Title Tribunal, and he will be able to update you about the outcome of that and where we go with that. So Margaret, who I have had the pleasure of meeting a number of times, quite a few times on the Liverpool Plains, getting the update as to the Santos project, has worked to mobilise farmers across the Liverpool Plains, both with coal seam gas and coal, but particularly the Hunter gas pipeline. Everybody kind of talks about the coal seam gas project. It's the Hunter gas pipeline as well, of course, that is so critical to this project, and that's what Margaret will be able to explain to you. And we can also talk about the threat to groundwater, to water, to prime agricultural land, and of course what that means in terms of our future food bowl status. Margaret, I'm going to throw to you straight away before I introduce the others. Let's hear from you.
Thanks, Cate. I'm on Gomeroi country, and I want to acknowledge that the Pilliga, all of the Liverpool Plains and beyond, is Gomeroi country. And thanks, Cate, for the introduction. You know, I am a farmer on the Liverpool Plains, and I have been working for Lock the Gate as a Northwest Gasfield Free coordinator. And I just want to share a screen with you to kick off this. And I'm hoping, is that visible to everyone now?
Yes, that's perfect. Thanks, Margaret.
Thanks so much, Kate. Okay, so I work with communities, not only in regards to the Narrabri gas project in the Pilliga and associated pipelines. You know, Santos have ambitions to create a gas field in the heart of the Liverpool Plains. I mean, that's known from various documents. And I don't know whether you're aware, but over 15 years ago, a company called Eastern Star Gas proposed 550 gas wells in the Pilliga forest. Santos purchased that company in 2011 and now plan 850 wells. And recently, Santos have been active on the Liverpool Plains. They've been seismic testing. They've reactivated 4 dormant coal seam gas wells that have been shut in for about 12 years. Now they've opened those up. They're extracting water. They are to flare all the gas because they can't take it anywhere. And while all this is talk about the need for the Narrabri gas project, Santos are not actually in a position to make a final investment decision until they've got all the necessary leases and licenses for the 4 link projects. So we've got the Narrabri gas project, and we've got the 3 connected pipelines from the Pilliga to the coast through the Liverpool Plains in the Hunter Valley. Santos need the approval of 4 petroleum production leases. So they've put in an application, and these 4 pink areas that you can see comprise the footprint of the Narrabri gas project, but they have yet to have final approval, as the Gomeroi people have a native title claim that includes the area of the project. Santos need an agreement with them. The Gomeroi have strongly opposed this for a very long time and had a nation meeting in March 22 where they voted 162-2 against Santos's offer. So Santos then applied to the Native Title Tribunal for a future acts determination to sort of override the wishes of the Gomeroi and have these production leases granted. So the tribunal, I've got to say, found in favour of Santos in December of 22. The Gomeroi subsequently appealed this in the federal court and were successful. In April 24, the court ruled that the climate change impacts must be considered when determining whether a fossil fuel project can go ahead on native title land. This legal decision was a first of its kind. As a result, the lease applications went back to the Native Title Tribunal for a second Future Act determination. And this, again, was found in favour of Santos the second time round. So that occurred on the 19th of May. But the staunch Gomeroi last Monday lodged another appeal in the federal court challenging the native title's second decision. So should they eventually have the leases granted and receive approval from the Native Title Tribunal, Santos still need to get the gas from the Pilliga to the coast, and this requires approval of 3 separate pipeline projects. The first one, known as the Narrabri Lateral Pipeline, is about 50 kilometres long, carves through the Pilliga and pipeline to connect to what most people are aware of, the Hunter Gas Pipeline near Barn Bar. Santos have yet to submit an environmental impact statement for this to the Department of Planning. We do expect it in the next month or 2, but Santos have often take a lot longer time frame than they anticipate. And Santos have actually referred this project, the Narrabri Lateral Pipeline, under the Commonwealth EPBC Act and said it was not a controlled action in their view. However, the Commonwealth said it was due to likely impacts on threatened species and ecological communities, but not on water resources. Early this month, a Liverpool Plains community group, the Malali Gas and Pipeline Accord, launched a legal challenge in the federal court to protect the region's water resources from coal seam gas development. This suit challenges the federal government's decision not to apply key water protections to the proposed Narrabri lateral pipeline. If this project is approved eventually, Santos will still need to submit a valid application for a pipeline licence before, and have it granted, before they can commence construction of the pipe. The second pipe, known as the Hunter Gas Pipeline, which is more in the media, connects from the Narrabri lateral near Barnbar down to the Hunter Lateral Pipeline at Miller's Forest, somewhere north of Newcastle. And this pipeline is approved insofar as it's got a 200-metre corridor in which Santos need to establish a 30-metre easement. And again, they will need a pipeline licence before they can construct the pipeline, which they haven't. And they're not even in a position to apply for a pipeline licence at this stage due to considerable landholder opposition, where many of the hundreds impacted will not let them on the property to garner the information they need for a valid pipeline licence application. Now, the third pipeline is quite a short one. It's about 6 kilometres long. And this won't be a Santos project. This is, in fact, a Gomeroi project. It's to connect to Gomeroi's existing high-pressure gas pipeline near Hexham. And Gomeroi have yet to lodge a modification report to progress through the planning system. If, again, this pipeline is approved, Gomeroi plan to lodge an application to vary their existing pipeline licence for the infrastructure that they already have. And they would need that application for a variation to be approved again before they can construct any of it. It's been an interesting journey over a long time, and we notice that there's been considerable opposition to Santos's plans by Gomeroi, farmers, scientists and conservationists. Successive New South Wales governments have failed to recognise the incredible level of opposition from those most at risk from Santos's plans to extract coal seam gas, Gomeroi country in the Pilliga, to the Liverpool Plains and the hundreds of landholders who may be forced to host a high-pressure gas pipeline. We've seen some incredible alliances emerge over the last few years. Unions New South Wales has actively supported the Gomeroi people over the last 3 years in their fight against Santos's Narrabri gas project, expressing strong support for the Gomeroi's right to self-determination and their opposition to the project, which is a threat to the environment and cultural heritage. This support includes advocating for Gomeroi's land rights and a just transition away from fossil fuels. In 2023, a 3,000-strong rally was held in Sydney to protest coal seam gas mining, with a focus on protecting agricultural land, water resources and Aboriginal heritage from the expansion of gas projects. This was a rally organised by a somewhat unlikely alliance of Gomeroi, the CWA of New South Wales Farmers Association, Unions New South Wales and Lock the Gate Alliance. And I think I've just summarised the few key things about the project, Santos's position, about the leases and licences that they require before they can make a final investment decision, the support of the Gomeroi have, and also the united communities from all sorts of sectors. And I'd like to leave my closing comment with what most people view. No CSD, not now, not ever. Thanks, Kate.
Good on you, Margaret. Lots of positive comments coming in for you as you were talking. That was fantastic. And thanks everybody for putting in, not everyone, obviously it's voluntary, but there's been lots of engagement on the chats in terms of where you are tuning in from. And I see some questions in the Q&A as well. Be very assured that those questions will be answered. There's a couple there that I know Tim Buckley is going to be able to answer very easily. Bubbly, can I check out your travelling? Should we throw to you now? Would you prefer us to go to Tim, or you're trying to... Are you good?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. One
I'm good to go,
second.
Kate. Let me turn away
Okay.
from that spotlight.
Yeah, okay. Good on you. Bubbly is on the move, as you can tell. As I said when I was introducing Bubbly, he is a proud Gomeroi man, defender of country, social justice advocate, and he's been at the forefront of the Narrabri Coal Seam Gas Project. He is around, comes to Parliament quite a bit to lobby and pressure the politicians. Good on him. I wish probably more of them, and probably open the door to you guys, though, to be honest. He has warned of the threats to the Great Artesian Basin, sacred songlines, future generations, and as I said, was very played a pivotal role in the case in the Native Title Tribunal. He'll be able to update us on all of this and just tell everybody how appalling this entire project is. Bubbly, I'll throw to you.
Well, Yum and G'day, everybody. I'm out here at the Minto Netball Courts on Dharawal country. I do reside out here, so I work on Gadigal in the city on Elizabeth Street. So, and at Glebe, another suburb of Sydney there, I've got 2 jobs, and it's not because of the cost of living. It's just because I have 5 daughters at home who eat like adults. I'm here at one. Then this is a netball rep with the Campbelltown District Netball Association, so I figured I'd pull in here. But look, the obviously, as Margaret said before, the fight's been going on for a very long time, and I was a native title applicant for a good while, from 2016 up until 2023, where the negotiation process of that was very infuriating when you're sitting across the table. And the one thing that Santos made their FATA, the Future Act Determination application, when the whole country was in lockdown, mind you, back in, I think it was May of 2021, they said good faith. Now, I was across the table and nothing they had ever said was in good faith, judging by sitting across the table. And also, if you're from the court case, their lawyer had actually said, so if anyone's sort of with a lawyer, they take your thoughts and feelings into the court. They discounted our culture and heritage. They even said that we haven't even got determination yet, and from the get-go, with I think it was 21,000 submissions that went in against that EIS back in the day, and most people were opposed to it. I mean, they had people come from Queensland to do our culture and heritage assessment for that, and didn't even get any Gomeroi person to go there and actually, sort of assess it. The culture and heritage laws in New South Wales are the worst in the country, okay, for protection of our sites. So if you look at the Northern Territory right now, the Sacred Sites Act, they're attacking that as well so that they can approve gas up there as well. One big myth that is around in the country, where they think that we need gas. No, we don't. Where I know that from going to their AGM a couple of months ago, they've already tapped into a 100-year reserve. And if you think of the Moomba to Sydney pipeline, they could use that, whereas we don't want any gas extracted from any part of the country, but that infrastructure is already in place, and they use that lie all of the time. Where I've seen somebody in the chat before, they're asked, is it for domestic or are they going to export it? Look, they always say that they're going to keep it here, but obviously there's more profit in them sending it overseas and selling it, to other people or whatever they do. But we don't believe, and we've always said that to them in the negotiation process, that we would rather that you didn't even have the 850 gas wells to come. I asked a question last year at their AGM where they say that they're going to have zero net emissions. How are you going to capture the methane going up out of 850 gas wells? They couldn't answer that in a definitive way. I should have pressed that Keith more, but it was sort of, I don't know, we're taught within our teachings to be mediators and sort of not be too aggressive when you go into that space. I know that it's very hard not to run on emotion. But this year I went back and sort of asked different questions about it, and they're smart Alex in regards to the way that they answer you, because they're talking to their shareholders, not really to you, to be honest with you. And it's been quite frustrating over the 10 years that I've sort of been involved in it, and as a Gomeroi person, you're obligated to defend your country no matter no matter what company comes there to extract any type of resource out of it, and obviously Shidehaven and, Shenhua, we stopped them, and that's their real name there, Kate, trust me on that, because we've dealt with them in the past as well, and they have total disregard for our culture and heritage, and it's profit before anything that we have there. I'll give you an example. If you go to Gomeroi, they put 10,000-year-old grinding grooves in the park that are split apart now. So they really don't care about it. And they're the same as the government. If the New South Wales government is sitting with Santos against us in the court, then obviously we know where they're going to go in regards to that lateral west pipeline, with Penny Sharp and I think Kyle Scully not approving that yet. I know that the Gomeroi people have been negotiating with them. They did stall for a little bit, but they're back doing that right now. And for us as Gomeroi people, the information that you get from them is very fragmented, and they're asked by NTS Corp to not disclose the information when they're in there, which is totally unacceptable for us. I had those discussions when I was an applicant with NTS Corp to say, well, I'm obligated to answer a question if one of my family or countrymen or women ask me. So I would tell people what was happening all of the time to keep them informed so that they weren't left guessing as to the outcomes within our country. I'm glad that they did appeal. I tried to get a Section 10 going for the last couple of years, and that's permanent protection for a site under the Culture and Heritage Act. And I'll be totally honest that I did not get any help. There was more opposition and stuff like that from my own, people, and sort of egos come into that. And you had to go through a whole rigmarole of things to try to get information so that you can put it in. So this week I actually wrote to the EDO and said I will pass it on to the applicant group and NTS Corp to do that, seeing as though they're the ones that hold all the information. Hopefully they put that in and then we'll see where we go from there. I mean, it is a good thing that they appealed. They've been a bit more open with the information this time than what they were in the past, which is a good thing. They had a couple of, things that they posted yesterday that people shared around. And look, obviously, you never give up. You know what I mean? I'll give you an example. With the 1983 Land Rights Act, we've only got 0.1% of land through that act, and we know that the government only give you land back that they don't use or they don't want to use, and when it comes to forests that are so vital to an ecosystem as well as the Artesian Basin, I can't understand in my thinking as to why they would do it there or do it anywhere really, when they were talking about a just transition to renewables, probably 5 or 6 years ago, and all of the naysayers and everybody else, they'll get in there and they'll say, you can't do it without coal. Well, yes, you can. You just got to take the plunge and do it, and build jobs and create jobs so that way people can go into other industries to do it. I mean, obviously, you got WA and other places like that, so their infrastructure is iron ore and everything else, with mining over there. So it's tied into that government. Whereas the Australian government, if they got all of these fellas to pay tax, then we'd be like Sweden and other places where health, education, all of these things would not cost a fortune, and you wouldn't have the problems now where the cost of living and all of these other things that go in with that. But they're all about profit. And, Santos have been giving money to the New South Wales government and the federal government for years. So have other mining companies, obviously. So they're all tied in together with that. But like Margaret said before, where you have unlikely alliances, we have good, hard conversations about defending our country, and the one thing that you have to leave at the door is your own personal feelings in regards to stuff, because if you want the same outcome at the end of the day where you just want these bastards to piss off, then that's what's got to happen. We did it with Shenhua, where we did a Section 10 there, myself and others, and then the farmers did one as well in regards to what they wanted to defend. Obviously, things happened with China and the Australian government back then, but they're gone now. So you can get those little victories in big losses, as we say all the time, because they're still destroying our country and other Aboriginal people's country all across the country every single day and every minute of that day, and You know, most people don't see the profits. Obviously, in the Northern Territory, South Australia and WA, they have a system where they get royalties. They don't have that in Queensland and New South Wales under the Native Title Act. You know, you've only got the right to negotiate. You can't veto anything. You know, it's in that act. And obviously, people know with the 10-point plan that Howard came in with after Mabo too. He said that we have too many rights to our own land. You know, so that's why they did that. But like I said before, you know, we don't give up. You know, you keep on going. I mean, what's the point of giving up? You know, you always talk about leaving a legacy for your children, and the land holds those stories within it so that they can get that same feeling or spirit, you know, like where Margaret is and that when you turn left at Gunnedah to go over to Kuna, you know, it's beautiful as you drive towards the Warrumbungles, you know, and every part of Gomeroi country is. So why wouldn't you want to defend that? You know, it is most important that people sort of go for that 5-hour drive, you know, northwest of Sydney, where we are, you know, what a proper name for it, you know, and to go and have a look at what you're actually wanting to defend, you know, and the drive itself is beautiful, you know, the up and down of the lulls in the landscape, you know, as you come into Singleton, you can see there's a floodplain there and you honestly think, well, that's why it floods there, but there's mountains on both sides, and when the Great Dividing Range starts at Murrurundi and you go up over it, then that land flattens out. I mean, when you hit Willow Tree and it's 287 kilometres to Moree, where all my family are, then certainly you know your destination, what it holds. Because your ancestors, they always wake up to greet you, you know, and fill you with that feeling that your land gives you at the same time. You know, and I've never thought about giving up with this fight. They came to Terry-Ii and we kicked them out. You know, and the one thing that happened when they went to Narrabri was the Shire and the Land Council there actually accommodated them and the money that they had to offer, you know, where obviously back then the Moree Shire had a moratorium in regards to CSG. I'm not sure where they sit now. That was with Katrina Humphries at the time, you know, so for us as Gomeroi people, you know, even though some of us have been out there, there are a lot of other people that feel the same way about their country, but they don't have the capacity to do that. And I'm only one of many people that have stood up over time. You know, we do that in various, you know, in different ways. You know, I believe that sort of show my children, and, you know, we have a saying where you can't be what you can't see. You know, so if you don't show them that you want to defend your country, that you are, then they're not going to do that as well. You know, and they see the beauty in the Pilliga. I've taken my kids out to the pottery and out to those camps, you know, years ago to show them that the beauty that is there, we want it to be there for them when they've got their kids and their kids and their kids. You know, so everybody that's come on tonight, you know, I thank you. And I've seen Ann Kennedy write you a little comment there before, Margaret, and it's good to see you, Ann, if you're still there, even though I can't see your face, but I see your spirit all of the time. You know, so there's a lot of people that are still in this fight that have been there, you know, from the get-go. Some people go out and they always come back, you know, and sort of sharing your voice and your thoughts, you know, and your heart and spirit. That's the most important part. We can't lose faith. Obviously, the government have an agenda and they'll always stick to that. But if we stick to the same one that we have as a collective of people, then we'll overcome that and we'll beat them. Thanks, Kate.
Good on you, Bubbly. Thank you so much. I hope you saw all of those reactions, the little emojis floating up the screen as you were talking, and there's a lot now. So lots of love hearts, lots of claps, lots of thumbs up, lots of some angry when you were talking about Santos. So yeah, lots of wonderful feedback. And Kennedy, who I also saw jump up, who has been a wonderful stalwart campaigner for the Great Artesian Basin and to stop mining, the impact of bloody coal and gas mining on the Great Artesian Basin. So good to see you joining us, and Kennedy. Okay, now, Tim, I'll go to you in a second, just to let everybody know as well that I see a couple of people are sometimes raising their hands, but the best thing to do is to pop your question in the Q&A. So there's more questions in there. If you do have questions, pop them in the Q&A. Tim, you've got some slides, and then I might throw you a question or two of some of the ones that have come in. So Tim, of course, look, I think a lot of people know Tim, founder and director of Climate Energy Finance, which is an independent think tank. Tim just provides such excellent expert analysis on energy markets, finance and policy, but has really such a fantastic resource for those of us who are wanting to ideally keep coal and gas in the ground. And he just basically cuts through all the crap that we hear, the spin we hear from the fossil fuel industry and from the governments that support that. So, Tim, thanks for making yourself available for tonight, and I'll throw to you.
Thanks, Kate, and thanks, Margaret and Bubbly. I live on Gadigal lands, but tonight I am visiting the Cubby lands in Queensland, so I pay my respects as well. I'm not going to kill you with a whole lot of slides, but I thought I did just prepare a couple. I'll start with one, just a global one, to talk about a little bit of positive. This is just a chart reminding us that we are winning. We're just winning way too slowly. And so this is globally the deployments of renewable energy capacity versus non-renewable capacity. So winning, but just winning way, way too slowly. A second one, which is out of California, but again, it gets to the whole myth of gas being critical for grid reliability, energy security, and so on. So certainly, to me, there has been enormous technology change, a lot of it driven by China. And so when you look about the unbelievable power of solar energy, wind energy, but combined battery energy storage, and hopefully to come vehicle to grid, or there's no hope in it, it's going to come. Technology innovation's now unstoppable, and that's accelerating the transformation. So this is just a chart from this week showing California, where, you know, we're reminded regularly that the sun goes down every night, and this purple is that batteries are now supplying a huge amount of power in the evening peak. Imagine time shifting our abundant, low-cost, zero-emission solar energy into the evening peak, and that is just going to permanently erode gas peaking power plants, as it's already undermined gas baseload power. So just to talk in the positive. And again, just a chart that the Clean Energy Regulator put out earlier this week, or last week, sorry, just highlighting that there is a huge increase in renewable energy capacity across Australia, but we need to go a lot faster. And the good news is that there is a fair bit of capacity coming through. For all the naysayers out there in the Murdoch media lands, we are at 41% renewable penetration on average in the national electricity market in the first 6 months of 2025. We've got 5.5 years to get to Minister Bowen's 82% renewables by 2030. So we still can do it, but we need to go twice as fast as we're currently going. Moving to gas, East Coast Australia has a contrived shortage, and very much as Bubbly highlighted, this chart is just some numbers that the Australian Energy Market Operator Gas Statement of Opportunities put out, showing the fourth quarter 2024 picture. And it just reminds us that despite the fact that we have increased gas production across Eastern Australia by 300% in the last decade, 84% of our gas is exported. So it is a contrived shortage. More production will do absolutely nothing to solve the shortage because it is contrived. It's not real. We've increased production by 300%. Domestic demand has collapsed in the last decade because the gas price has gone up. Economics 101 tells you that is the inevitable outcome. And you can see here that we literally export 84% of the gas. So unless the government were to implement a gas reservation policy based on all the gas that we've collectively funded for the last 50 years, invariably we can come to a gas reservation. I mean, the horse is already bolted, but at the end of the day, it's about getting the right price and only exporting the surplus. That would have been a logical policy to have implemented a decade ago. Now, I would just argue there are better solutions. Talking about better solutions, the Victorian gas substitution roadmap, I've just stolen this from Tristan Edis at Green Energy Markets, but he just highlights that Victoria has a gas substitution roadmap. They are decommissioning gas heating systems. The number of units being decommissioned is going up every month, and that is actually generating a significant reduction in permanent demand. But we need to see phase 2 of the Victorian gas substitution roadmap. I believe that's coming out this week, and that will accelerate the reduction, the addiction to gas, methane gas, in the Victorian energy market. And at the end of the day, where you've got a contrived shortage, the best thing we can do is electrify everything, and therefore reserve what limited gas the gas cartel is willing to supply to us, and supply that to our heavy industry until they can decarbonise as well. But Victoria has a gas substitution roadmap. It's way beyond time for New South Wales to do the same thing. A year ago, when I was looking at New South Wales, I was getting very optimistic, but unfortunately I updated it, which is partly why I told Kate I would talk to a couple of slides, because this one's depressing. It just, the orange or the red in the middle shows that a year ago, New South Wales actually took a global leadership position and accelerated deployment of heat pumps across our state, overtook Victoria, and everything was going great until the New South Wales government household energy savings upgrade program ran out of money, and they were subsidising the cost of electrification by up to 33%. And unfortunately, you've just seen the first quarter of 2025, New South Wales installs have collapsed. So we really need to pressure the New South Wales government, rather than spending hundreds of millions of dollars building new gas pipelines and unlocking enormous environmental destruction. We should be using a little bit of the government public capital to continue to accelerate electrification of New South Wales households, and reserving what gas we are allowed to have of our gas, the limited bit of gas that the multinational gas cartel is willing to supply New South Wales citizens. We should reserve that for heavy industry. But you can see here the collapse of the New South Wales plan. So we were going really nicely in the right direction, but clearly failing again in 2025. And my final slide, I'll just reference Santos. At the end of the day, Santos obviously has been trying to open up Narrabri for more than a decade, but they've now got to get out of jail free for their CEO, who wants to retire on a high, get paid out massive amounts of money so that he can go back to Scotland. And I just make the observation, apart from the massive national energy security issues of letting a state-owned enterprise company from the UAE take control of one of the biggest gas companies in Australia to work at their national interest, not Australia's national interest, I'll just throw out an extra point that the biggest loser is, in fact, the Australian Tax Office and all taxpayers of Australia, because when you borrow $36 billion to privatise and take Santos offshore, you will be paying about $1.8 billion interest a year on the funds deployed, the debt that will be deployed to acquire Santos. Now, $1.8 billion means that Santos will go from having paid $400 million, $485 million a year of corporate tax in Australia a year for the last 2 years, they'll go to paying precisely zero. So it'll in fact cost Australian taxpayers $10 to $20 billion in terms of the NPV of corporate tax losses. So I just thought I'd throw that out. It's not a gas perspective. It's just I'm anti, I work in the public interest of Australians, and it's Australian taxpayers. Now, we were just hearing how the New South Wales government can't afford to substitute gas appliances in households, you could easily find the money with about 1/10 of the corporate tax that Santos paid in the last 2 years. We're going to lose all of that. So the biggest loser of beyond energy security is, in fact, taxpayers of Australia. So just think, whenever you're talking about the loss of Santos to a foreign company, it will go to paying precisely zero corporate tax in Australia, like almost every other multinational in Australia. And that means the income taxpayers will just have to make up for that by paying even more income tax, so that multinationals can operate tax-free in our country using our public assets for their private foreign gains. And I'll stop on that negative note. Thanks, Kate.
Good on you, Tim. Thank you. Lots of emojis going for you, as there were for you too, Margaret. Everybody is super engaged and reacting to the information, whether it be good, bad, whatever it is. It's extremely informative, and people are really appreciative. And there's questions as well that are coming through. I thought I'd just quickly, it kind of builds on what you said, Tim, but Bubbly, you might want to jump in. In fact, Margaret, you might want to as well. But so the ruling from the Native Title Tribunal, one of the conditions of Santos, if the project goes ahead, was for the gas to be used in the domestic market. Is this, Tim, firstly to you, I mean, would the gas literally being pumped out of the ground there be used? Is that possible? Is that realistic? Based on what you said, wouldn't they just kind of potentially do something with the books to make it look like that's what they were doing? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you, in our discussions, use the word switcheroo. Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, we'd have to rely on our governments to actually serve the people of Australia and the people of New South Wales. And obviously, a couple of decades of absolute capture by the fossil fuel multinational cartel. And I use that word very deliberately. They donate to both sides of our governments, state and federally. We have regulatory capture. So if you assume that those same regulators or government officials are somehow now going to serve the people of New South Wales, having failed to do it, why would we, I think, isn't that the definition of insanity? Expect the Parliament's going to do something different to what they've done before and serve the people who are actually voting for them rather than their donors. But yeah, so ultimately, if we don't have a gas reservation system, then you just get the switcheroo. They might increase Narrabri production. They might claim that that's going to be servicing the people of New South Wales. What it will do, exactly as Margaret talked about, is enable a new gas pipeline, which will be a regulated asset, which we, the ratepayers of New South Wales, will be funding for the next 50 years. So we'll pay for their infrastructure. That'll lock it in, but ultimately, without a really strong gas reservation policy that is retrospective. At the end of the day, the role of government is to serve the people of Australia. So you'll hear the multinational gas cartels squeal. They just predictably squeal sovereign risk, but sovereign risk is a bullshit phrase by vested interests who actually would be complaining about the government actually looking after the people of Australia. That is what governments are meant to do. Sovereign risk is the failure of the government to do it. We've already got sovereign risk. So I'm sort of going on and on about it. Unless you had credible legislation passed, which, I mean, supposedly Peter Dutton was going to do that. There was obviously, as with any of his policies, no detail, no plan, and I'm sure would have had zero impact on the gas industry. But what would really worry me is if we do a gas reservation plan that only involves new development, that's effectively enabling new development. And that's one of the many flaws in what Peter Dutton said. He proposed to put $1.3 billion of taxpayer subsidies on the table to fund a whole lot of enabling infrastructure for the gas industry as part of his reservation. And again, it takes you about 3 seconds to scratch the surface of their policy to realise it's going to be flawed. But if we being realistic, we should have had a reservation 15 years ago, the way Western Australia has, but you only have to look at the gas price in WA in 2025 to see it's going up 50 or 100%. The reservation has been game to buggery because the state government in WA has given so many exceptions to the rule that the reservation plans in WA are failing, and industry is now being screwed in WA as it's been screwed for the last decade in Eastern Australia. So I would argue we're far better off actually just electrifying everything and permanently getting off our methane gas addiction because of all the reasons that have been outlined by Bubbly, by Margaret, and in terms of straight economics.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I'll go to Bubbly, and just to be very clear, we don't want a gas reservation policy if it means justifying Narrabri, just to be very clear. Bubbly, what's your thoughts on this?
Only one question I would ask is, why would you build a gas pipeline to the biggest coal port in the Southern Hemisphere if you're not going to send it overseas? I mean, when Alba then came in at the last election, they were talking about no new gas and coal. And then they approved, I think, in Queensland allowed about 110. So I wouldn't trust them, and I certainly don't trust Keith Gallagher and or Kevin Gallagher and Keith, who was the chair of the meeting down there at the AGM.
Yeah.
You know, they all just lie to people, and people are so gullible. I can't understand why they believe them when they lied straight to people's faces and then did that coming up to the last election and then this one. I mean, I'm glad people did listen to ScoMo. You know, we need a gas-fired recovery at the last election, but Labor sort of pounced on that. And I mean, obviously this time it was either Voldemort or Albo. So which way are you going to go? You know, so certainly no one's going to go with Dutton or Clown, but sort of they just haven't done the right thing, I don't think, by any person with vision in regards to the future of Australia, you know, with sustainability. I mean, how people sort of, they'll say to you, well, 60,000, now it's 80,000. See, most Aboriginal nations across this whole country have a creation story that started with the universe. You know, so they'll wait for an archaeologist to come in to do an Aboriginal culture and heritage assessment. Then they'll carbon date stuff and they'll say, oh, 60,000. We have Gumaloo Biddiwi within ours, you know, where the we is the fire, the light. You know, so before that big light, the Big Bang Theory. You see, so our Creator gave us our consciousness and law to protect our country. You see, so we're not only, it's not only our birthright to it, but it's our obligation to defend it. You see, and I'll never believe a politician. You know, like I'll give you an example. Like there were 3 instances in my lifetime. 1984 with the New South Wales Lands Rights Act. Okay, where we didn't really get nothing out of that. Because back then they started those ads where we're going to come and kick you off your land. Margaret knows me. I've never said that to her. I'm going to come to Malali and ask you to move. No, I'll come and have a cup of tea with you. You know, it's just because of the nature of blackfellas. Then we had the Native Title Act. They used the same type of ads. We're going to come and kick you off your land and out of the country. We don't do that type of stuff. You know, coexistence and co-creation together, that's the way of the future in regards to, you know, like if the stuff that I see on social media and that, well, those fellas, they can go back to wherever they came from because it's unacceptable to be racist, you know, and to discriminate against people just because they're different to you. You know, and then last year we had the referendum where they did that same thing, even putting us in the founding document of the country where they said they're going to come and kick you out of the land, off the land and stuff like that. I mean, for 30 years they went around back then. Obviously, they didn't have cars, they didn't have emails or anything like that to get them around. So it took 30 years to write that up. But they left us out. You know what I mean? Up until 67, obviously, we weren't counted in the census. We had voting rights in 63. Now, a lot of people have that misconception about stuff, but you only got to go and have a look and sort of talk to Aboriginal people who were alive then. My father's 79, 80 years old soon. You know, and he lived under that, where he started working at 10 years old. You know, because he had to run from the welfare, because they were after him and his brothers and sisters. You know, like, we were affected by those type of acts, you know, within my own family. My grandmother was a domestic in Moree. You know, the freedom rides happened in that town. Walgett, Collarinabri and Moree. Whereas those people don't hold that hate and anger. They just want to protect their country that they did in the past so that it's there for everybody to use and love the way that we do. Like I work with a lot of farmers, you know what I mean? That had differing views. But the thing is, they all wanted the same thing, to protect that land. So I'll ask that same question, like, why are you going to build a pipeline down to the biggest coal port in the Southern Hemisphere if you're not going to send it overseas for a profit? I don't believe them. They never moved on the production levy to give the Gomeroi people more money in the offer that they gave us. And they called good faith. They don't work in good faith. They only work on the profit for them, nobody else. That's why we don't want it. You've got people up over that. They live in poverty. We were born into abject poverty. But when they come back to you and they say, oh, this was a good deal, like, what was it? 1.5% or something? It was disgraceful. And we had 162 to 2 people. Well, there were about 168 people there that voted that day, where it was when the Omicron virus started coming back, like with COVID, there was a big rise. So Gomeroi people were actually scared to go there. With chronic disease and stuff like that, we were forced into a corner, but we voted and we said no. So the government didn't listen then, and they're not going to listen now, and neither are Santos. But I think every single person, and I've said this here over the past 10 years, if go and talk to people outside of your own circle of friends that you have, and sort of inform them that we don't need the gas. There's enough here. Let's transition away. Like, there are housing projects that are out here where they still put in bloody gas, but they're putting in solar panels and other stuff too, so that you can sort of offset. But it's just got to be electricity now all of the time, and then you can there are things that you can actually power your house off in between two houses. There is technology out there where you can do that, but I don't know what it is about the government. They're too scared or something to transition it. In our lifetime at least. I'm only 54 years old. Let's get it done in the next 26 before I'm 80 like my father. Yeah. Sorry, I went a bit long there, Kate, answering that bloody question.
It's like, everything you're saying is fantastic, and I don't want to interrupt you, but we've got also heaps to talk about, and it is very interesting, Tim, what you were saying, and Bubbly was talking about why aren't we transitioning, households away from electrification. Those slide you showed in terms of the New South Wales government going so backwards in relation to heat pumps is just extraordinary. I'm going to use that at some point over the next couple of months. Margaret, I'm going to go to you with a slightly different question, just so we can go through a number of issues, if that's okay. Now, we had one from Anne Pico about water, and I thought, like, we haven't talked about that much, but there's always this very frustrating thing with mining in terms of what the companies pay for the water they use, how it's measured. Have you got some information about the impact of this project on water in the area and groundwater particularly? Is that something you can speak to? And then what can we do to, clearly we need legislative change in this area, but any thoughts on that? The question was, how can we start charging these extractors for the water they use?
Well, two things. I think Pilliga, well-known recharge area for the Great Artesian Basin that they need to drill through to access the coal seams below. The fact that water obeys gravity, and ultimately the 34 gigalitres of water that they anticipate they will withdraw from the coal seams will be refilled. So that draws on upper aquifers. There's always a risk of contamination as well as depletion. We're seeing it in Queensland, where over 702 water bores have been or will be affected in the Surat Basin, largely due to coal seam gas, with drawdowns up to 400 metres. On the Liverpool Plains, the coal seam, the water that farmers rely on, because we live in an environment of relatively high evaporation and low rainfall, so we rely largely on water beneath our feet, as in aquifers, is interconnected with the coal seams from which Santos would ambitions are to take coal seam from the coal underneath the Liverpool Plains is interconnected. It's in fact the reason that BHP and Chenoi's coal mines did not go ahead, because it was proven that the interconnectedness meant that any withdrawal from the coal seams would immediately impact the shallower aquifers across the Liverpool Plains. On top of that, that's recognised by the insurance industry. So now there's a growing number of insurers that will not insure people for even home insurance or public liability and other types of insurances, if there is coal seam gas infrastructure, including distribution, such as pipelines, at all. Allianz, the largest insurer in the world, won't. There's an exclusion within their product disclosure statements where if it exists on the address of the insurer, you're not insured, because it's recognised the risk is so high and there is no answer. If you contaminate underground water, there's no solution largely. There's no fix. So it's an incalculable cost. Therefore, insurers are walking away.
Yeah, which is an absolutely huge issue. I mean, there are so many issues that you just go, what? This is so crazy. How is it still being considered? How has it not been struck off? Water is just extraordinary, that risk, and that risk in terms of people being unable to insure their properties and farms and houses is just unbelievable. But ultimately, you can't insure the Great Artesian Basin and the loss of that water and connectivity. It's absolutely ridiculous. Tim, I want to throw to you in terms of price. So the Narrabri coal seam gas project has been criticised relentlessly by very good people who have done their research, including Buckley. But about the price of the project in terms of the gas it's going to produce, if it does go ahead, and we're going to do everything we can to stop it, it's really expensive, isn't it? You know, there's this whole thing about gas being a transition fuel, and the gas industry is trying to say that it's going to help people with their bills. Of course, the Murdoch media is saying it's renewables that are expensive, and the facts are clearly not. That doesn't stack up. So what's your view about the cost of this project for starters? And Margaret, I know you also know this very well. Go to Tim, Tim first. So.
Thanks, Kate. It was interesting when the LNP in the federal election proposed their gas reservation policy, and they said they'd cap the price at $10 Australian. You know, let's get a 30%, 40% reduction as a result of that. The industry's immediate response was, that's not economic. We can't make money at that level. Now, gas in Australia, in Eastern Australia, for 50 years used to be $3 to $4 petajoule. It's now $14, $15, $16 a petajoule. So it's gone up 300-400%, which was exactly what Santos aimed to do when they built they and the rest of the industry built 6 LNG export trains at Gladstone. It was all about getting a very low cost market, in a domestic only market in Australia. For 50 years, we had no LNG export capacity. The price went up 400% and has stayed at export price parity and beyond since then. And I say export price parity and beyond because often they've restricted supply domestically to the point where you just can't get a contract. And if you're willing to pay whatever price you have to keep your factories open, then you end up paying above the average of $13, $14, $15. So, sorry, I was just trying to remember his name, Voldemort, Peter Dutton, sorry, using Bubbly's comment there, that stuck in my mind. But yeah, he talked about a price of $10, and the industry's response was, it's not competitive. It's not enough to make their viable rates of return. But at the end of the day, they'll give us the most expensive gas and they'll export the cheapest gas. You know, they'll just sleight of hand means they will charge whatever they can. They'll tell you whatever they want. As Bubbly says, they'll just lie straight to your face to make sure that they maximise their private gains. They don't care about our water table. They don't care about our First Nations people. They don't care about their grandchildren, livable planet or anything else. It's just the holy dollar driving them as they sit in their foreign tax havens.
And how is the gas, the price of gas here in Australia compare to other countries?
Yeah, thanks, Kate. The key benchmark I use normally is America. America is the biggest gas exporter in the world. They're an LNG exporter in the world, liquid natural gas, LNG. Sorry, I hate the word natural. It's a fossil fuel. So we'll call it LNG to avoid that. Methane. They are the biggest exporter of methane in the world, but their domestic market methane price is between $2 and $4 a petajoule. Ours, so put that into Australian dollars, between 3 and 6 Aussie dollars, and our domestic price is around $14, $15. So the idea of a gas reservation at $10, we'd still be paying double what American industry and American consumers pay for their gas. Okay, it'd still be a 30% reduction in it, but the starting point should be anyone who wants to squill sovereign risk, any multinational, or the Japanese ambassador to Australia, and I've called him out many times for being an instrument of the Japanese gas industry. He's just making crap up. There is no sovereign risk here for the Australian government to actually look after Australia's national interests first and export the surplus. That's what any sensible government policy would be. We failed that test decades ago. So we ultimately pay export price parity. We pay 3 or 4 times what American industry and American consumers pay in the biggest gas market in the world, solely because we allow the gas cartel to exploit us. In America, they don't as yet, although obviously give Trump another couple of months and he'll be screwing the people of America even harder than he already is.
Thanks, Tim. Looking at some other questions, Margaret, I wonder if you know about this one. It's from Mandy King. Why did Santos fire up the 4 obsolete redundant gas wells recently? They're saying just to burn it continuously, totally wasteful. Is it a tactic to make the gas future scenario more visible, real to passers-by? Do you have comments about what they're doing in terms of the test wells and
yes,
which of course is quite current? Yeah.
They've reactivated these coal seam gas wells. Obviously, there's a lot of opposition on the Liverpool Plains, and basically Santos retreated to the Pilliga, not aware of the incredible opposition that they'd still face there. Now, it's well documented and well known that Santos's joint venture partner, Carbon Minerals Limited, in the 2 petroleum exploration licenses that cover 50% of the Liverpool Plains, that this is the next most explored area. There's hundreds of kilometres of seismic testing have been done. There are a number of coal seam gas wells, the 4 I've spoken about. There are others further south towards Spring Ridge, numerous core holes. So technical advisors to Santos and Carbon Minerals Limited have estimated the sheer quantity of gas on the Liverpool Plains, how shallow it is, how it's near pipeline quality, how it flows really well out of the coal seams. So, you know, we've always understood that one of the aim of Santos was to spill out of the Pilliga onto the Liverpool Plains. And that's basically been demonstrated to us and confirmed by the Barilaro Future of Gas statement, where they reduced the petroleum exploration licence area at the time in 2022 by 75%. But they kept most of the licences on the Liverpool Plains and the Pilliga and removed the ones further west and north and south, but just hung on to the Liverpool Plains because it was known about the quantity and quality of gas under the Liverpool Plains. And this is Santos just ramping up their exploration and appraisal work yet again.
Yeah, it's honestly, every time you hear about and talk about this issue, and I know it's your life, Margaret and Bubbly, it's just, it just beggars belief that is being actively considered. And of course, in terms of the approvals process, I just wanted to get to exactly where it's at now for kind of intervention. And I know you had some slides, Margaret, we're going to talk about this towards the end. And I'll go to you, Bubbly, after Margaret, in terms of, because we've had some people wanting to know what they can do. Bubbly, some people are saying what they can do to help you and Gomeroi. So, Margaret, we're at, not everything's been approved, despite what the New South Wales government will say every time we ask, the Greens ask and hassle either Penny Sharp, Environment Minister, you know, Courtney Houssos, Natural Resources Minister. We get this, well, our hands are tied and it's been approved and we can't really, it's too far down the track. What's your view on that, and what are some interventions coming up that people can stay tuned for and help out with?
Well, I think the pipelines is where the landholders understand many of the issues. I mean, landholders don't have the same reasons for opposing the pipeline by any means. Some are very big picture, but they're of the view that they're not going to let it happen. So many of them will not let Santos on. And at this stage through the planning process, we're looking at the Narrabri lateral pipeline that is yet to lodge its EIS. And should they lodge one, which we are actually anticipating next month or two, it will go on public exhibition. So that means that it doesn't matter where you live, you can make a submission and you know, try and influence the decision making regarding the project. And then there's the Gemini's short pipeline, the Hunter lateral pipeline. They have lodged a short introduction to the concept of this pipeline, but have yet to lodge a formal modification report. It too will go on public exhibition, I understand. Another opportunity for anyone, anywhere, to make comment on the pipeline and the impacts it might have and the bigger picture. It's obviously integral to the Narrabri gas project. Without the pipelines, and each and every one of the pipelines, they can't get the gas to market, not at this stage. The other thing that people might be interested in is that Lock the Gate are currently fundraising for the purchase of a drone-mounted methane sniffer with a plan to expose methane leaks in gas infrastructure. So if you want to chip in, you can go to appeals.lockthegate.org.au. And within Lock the Gate, we've discussed its first deployment, and that will be to the northwest, so that we can examine the methane levels in the Pilliga and the infrastructure that exists here, whether it's pilot wells, core holes, the existing, you know, gathering gas network in the Pilliga. That's an option for people.
Thanks, Margaret. That is so important and such a wonderful, tangible thing for people to support. It's the 23rd of June, so it's coming to the end of the financial year. I know some people like to give donations to tax deductible organisations, NGOs, which is a good thing to do at this time of the year. And the Lock the Gate is tax deductible as well. So absolutely go on to do that. You need the methane sniffer because the government's not doing its job, and the community they're always the ones that blow the whistle and have to show how outrageous these proposals are. So I reckon that's a fantastic purchase, and hopefully you guys get there. Bubbly, is there anything from your perspective? So I'll just say we've had like a few people kind of come on the chat. What can they do to help Gomeroi? Somebody else has said, does the team need a native title lawyer? I'm sure you've had a pretty good legal team, but, you know, I'm sure you might not say no to any offers of assistance either. So, yeah, go. What can people do?
I think, see, people have got to understand the way that they set up the native title system. So let's say NTS Corp work for the government. That's who they're funded by. So they're just there to help you negotiate with proponents when they want to develop in your country. So they're another arm of the government to usurp you out of your land. That's why they're there. Obviously, we've had people offer in the past and they've threatened them with legal action because they'll get the applicant group who are to buy into that yarn because they're all tied into the one thing. It's very hard to go to do anything on the outside. I found that working with you, the Greens, working with Margaret, farmers, other people who have raised their level of consciousness in regards to defending country. So the unions, with the MUA and other unions, the nurses and midwives, all of these people, where we live a symbiotic lifestyle with each other, where we benefit each other for the greater good. So coming into forums like this, sending their email to you because they would have got that so that they could come in. So sending things out in the future when we have rallies or when there's going to be stuff that's got to happen in the future on the Liverpool Plains in regards to occupation, to really stop it, to get up out of our comfort zone, to go and occupy it there so that way we stop that pipeline. Now, pipelines are a different type of infrastructure, so they can extinguish native title straight away. There's no negotiation. It happened with the APA before, whereas proponents and other people have to come in like Santos, Whitehaven, Shidehaven, Shenhua, Itamitsu, who Bubbly coal are owned by. So they only extract a certain, like thermal coal, to go to Japan because that's what their nuclear reactors run off. So it's taken straight to Japan. So that's why Itamitsu own Bubbly coal. And I've heard a yarn about them that I'll come to Parliament and I'll share with you in the next couple of days because I'm only down the road and that. But for us, as Gomeroi people, we will work with any single person who wants to come along and do what we have to do to stop it. And it's happening, in Burralula as well, where I'm going to go up there and talk to the mob there in the NT. I mean, obviously, Murray, what people asked that question before, about, well, he just approved Woodside, the gas shelf up there where the oldest petroglyphs in the world are right there. So they have total disregard for Aboriginal culture and heritage. And those things they were on the World Heritage List, I think, so they don't care. But I think the more people, we can be like that pebble into a pond, a ripple effect of good spirit of us all moving in the same direction. People are starting to rise up against it now. And I think the more that we do, the better outcomes we'll get for our children's grandchildren and theirs. Like we're not going to be here, in the future. But the one thing that we can leave, this year the NAIDOC is about legacy. What are you going to leave your kids and their kids and their kids and their kids? Because I had my mother and father who showed me that, standing up for what's right is the right thing to do. It's not the wrong thing to do. You're always going to have people who are idiots who believe what the government's saying in the media. Well, who are they owned by? Who are they funded by? They're funded by people who have got more money than us, but they haven't got our strength and will to stand up against what's right. So that's the only thing I'll tell all of you. You did the right thing by coming in tonight, and with the comments and stuff like that, it's very easy for our emotions to control us. But let's control our emotions and our way of thinking when we come with the good spirit that is in there, in our heart, our Dewey, our spirit, and our G, our heart. So I know we can get emotional and sort of, our emotions control the way that we think and feel sometimes, but we're all here for the same reason. So let's convey that type of message to each other when we're in the chat or asking a question. Thanks, Kate.
Good on you, Bubbly. Oh, you're a wonderful, wonderful man. Thank you. So I think we are going to start wrapping this up. We've heard in terms of what people can do. We will send an email out with links to petitions, links to the appeal page that Margaret said. Bubbly, if there's any fundraiser for your legal challenge or anything, I'll get that info from you as well, because potentially there might be people interested in that. If you need that, let me know. We can have that chat. We've also are kind of relaunching our Stop Santos campaign for the Greens. We're getting some new materials produced, focusing particularly on the next month or two. We'll get people focused on that EIS submission, Margaret, for the Narrabri lateral, was it? Was it that one? Yeah. Is that the right one? Or was it? Yeah. Yeah. Also, just remember, look, we've had Margaret here tonight, but there are landholders and people all the way up and down the proposed route of that pipeline. I've met with farmers around, landholders around Maitland, just north of Maitland. And there are little organised groups and big groups actually that are fighting this. So the majority of landholders all along the route have been contacted, and I understand are kind of being coordinated to continue to resist. What Bubbly is saying about getting out there at some point if shit gets real is absolutely what we will be assisting with, working with unions, Gomeroi, landholders and others to help stop. If everything else we do doesn't stop this project, then that's just what we have to do, because we know the destruction to sacred sites, to country, to the water, Great Artesian Basin, the climate, for goodness sake, is just absolutely untenable. And also, thanks for putting in, Bubbly, that you're going to be travelling up to the Northern Territory in terms of helping people up there, in terms of what they're also facing, and maybe we can keep people up to date with that. If there's any other potential questions, we'll try and do a scan of what people asked and see if we can put anything else into the email for you. And as I said, we're going to have some information sheets, fact sheets, materials about all of this as well. Thank you so much for joining in. This is honestly one of those campaigns that is continuing. As I said, it won't stop. The Greens are backing everybody who is standing strong against this outrageous proposal. We will continue to do what we can, whatever we can, to stop this. And Bubbly, Tim, Margaret, you're all wonderful in the different work that you do, the expertise that you bring this, and your passion to see, you know, a better bloody planet and a better safe climate. And Bubbly, thank you for your beautiful words at the end of your contribution then about love and peace and coming from the heart in terms of how we communicate with each other. That was a beautiful way to finish. So thank you, everyone. Until next time, see you on the front lines if it comes to that. Thank you.